Today is your opportunity to build the tomorrow you want. Good evening, everyone. I am Ria Mary John, second year BSc Psychology student. Welcome each and every one of you to the 17th session of PSY HUB, the international webinar series conducted by the Postgraduate Department of Psychology and Internal Quality Assurance Cell of Christajodi College of Management and Technology. Prayer is an active force. Prayer is the key that can open the door of heaven and rain down every hidden treasure that is our inheritance. So, may I call Serene Fernandez of second year BSc Psychology for her recital.
Ria, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
We the children come to thee, we thy dear ones cling to thee, God of love, God of light. We do sing thy lasting praise, God the Father, care us all, God the Pastor, lead us all, God the Master, teach us all. God the Divine, bless us all. Bless us all, bless us all, bless us all.
Thank you, Serene. The pandemic COVID-19 has put multifarious challenges for mankind at large. The basic nature of humankind is to face the challenge and walk new paths to find new solutions. But at times, relationship between various variables pose a wide arena of queries and threats. Hence, we are here on behalf of PSY HUB series, breaking up today's topic. Now we know it, but what is next? Discussing climate crisis and human behavior, led by Dr. Alphonsa Jose, a pioneering educationalist. Now, may I welcome Ms. Benita Rose Benny, Assistant Professor of KCMT, to welcome the gathering.
Ria, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So good evening, everyone. I'm extremely delighted and privileged to welcome you all to the 17th session of PSY HUB International Webinar Series organized by the Postgraduate Department of Psychology, Christajodi College of Management and Technology. Today, we are immensely blessed to have Dr. Alphonsa Jose, Assistant Professor of Psychology, Christ University, Bangalore, as our chief guest and resource person for the day. Through today's session, ma'am will surely open up new pathways of thought on environmental psychology. With that note, on behalf of entire management and faculty, I extend a sincere and heartfelt welcome to Dr. Alphonsa Jose. Next, I would like to welcome our very respected principal, Reverend Father Joshi Chirampuri CMI. As we all know, for the effective conduct of a webinar series like this, the constant support of the head of the institution is an integral part. Father has played a decisive role in all the activities associated with the series, and it is our happiness to welcome you to this session. Welcome, Father. Next, I would like to welcome our beloved Vice Principal, Dr. Verghese Anthony, to this session. As we all know, Sir has put in a great effort to have in consideration upon all the activities of our department, and he has given immense support for the functioning of this webinar series too. I welcome you to this session with all respect and happiness. Next, I would like to welcome a person who is the life behind this webinar series, the head of the department, Dr. Angel Thomas. The efforts made by her are indeed remarkable. Ma'am, it is my privilege to welcome you to this function. Next, I would like to welcome the IQSA coordinator, Dr. Sushil Joseph, and joint coordinator, Dr. Anu Anthony, for providing such a platform for us. I would also like to welcome the joint coordinator of the webinar, Ms. Anisha Rajan, Assistant Professor of Psychology, for her constant support. Last but not the least, I would like to welcome all the participants of this webinar. It is your constant support and your participation that makes this series a great success. Once again, welcoming one and all, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Let me call Aaron Thomas Joes of second year BSc Psychology to introduce our resource person.
Good evening to one and all. I feel extremely honored and delighted to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Alphonsa Jose, to the 17th session of PSY HUB International Webinar Series organized by the Postgraduate Department of Psychology, Christajodi College of Management and Technology. Dr. Alphonsa is an inspiration for many, as the accomplishments she has made are not an easy task. Christ University, Bangalore, Bannerghatta campus. She was Maulana Azad National Research Fellow in the Department of Applied Psychology, Pondicherry University. She completed her master's in applied psychology from the Department of Applied Psychology, Pondicherry University in 2015. Her doctoral research in the area of environmental psychology attempts to identify the psychological antecedents of building eco-friendly houses. She has authored more than 7 research articles in various peer-reviewed national and international journals, as well as in edited books. She presented research papers in various national and international forums and received the Best Paper Award. Ma'am, on behalf of Christiodi family, we're immensely happy and proud to hear from an esteemed personality like you. We are indeed looking forward to get enlightened with your views on climate crisis and human behavior. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Now, let's move on to the much awaited session. As we progress through, list your queries or doubts in the chat box and do complete the feedback form when provided. Participants, make sure your audios are muted. Now, may I proudly call Dr. Alphonsa Jose, Assistant Professor, Department of Psychology, Christ University, Bangalore, for the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Hope I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am. You're.
Thank you. Thank you, Ria, and thank you, Vinita ma'am, Anisha ma'am, Angel ma'am, and all the people who were working behind for this particular webinar series. And I really think it is a great initiative. And I think pandemic has given us a chance to grow together, learn together, and move together. I feel in that way. And thanks a lot for the very, kind and humble words from your end. And I'm really honored to be here as a part of this particular webinar. And I think I can share my screen because
yes, miss. Yes, miss.
So let me know if you can see my screen.
Sure.
Is it shared?
Not yet, miss.
Not yet. Yes. For today's webinar, I will be sharing it meanwhile, no issues.
Sure.
For the today's webinar, I have chosen this topic. Yes, now we know it, but what is next? I hope it is shared right now.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So, yes, we all are aware about the issue of climate change or climate crisis, or climate emergency, whatever we are calling right now. And the international forums, the way we are agreeing or the way we are actually calling it by the name of climate emergency right now. We know about it, but what is actually happening and how human race is actually racing against time in order to deal with this huge emergency we have at our hand. So that's the point of discussion. So I'll be bringing some idea from the existing literature on environmental psychology or conservation behavior. And we'll be discussing this particular issue of climate crisis, how we can deal with it using certain understanding we have in this particular field. Okay. So moving on, maybe I think I should start. So I think I should start with discussing what is climate and what is weather, because we had, or maybe at least the US people had a president who were saying that, okay, this year, all the scientists were saying that temperature is going up, or maybe there is a global warming happening. But this year, I felt more colder, or I felt colder than usual. There was a president who was speaking like this and denying climate change at its very face. So when we start the session, I feel like, okay, we should be reiterating what is climate and what is weather. So I think I can just ask a question. Okay, what was the weather today? Rhea, how was the weather today at your side, at your place?
Ma'am, it was
Sorry?
perfect. It was perfect.
It
No
was
rain.
perfect? Yeah.
So it was a good.
Was it cold? Was it raining? Was it hot? How was it?
No rain, but it's really hot today.
Exactly. So that is exactly what weather is. So that is just an event. Thank you, Raya, for the coming up. Yeah. So weather is something that is happening at that right at that point in time. But when we come to climate, it is an average temperature or maybe average of the particular weather that we are experiencing in a particular area for a period of time. So that is where the difference between climate and weather will be coming up. Okay, this is just setting up the stage. So we are moving on. Yeah. So then we have heard about climate change. Okay. So climate change, we might have studied it in our maybe science textbooks. And then there we considered it as an issue of melting glaciers. That is nowhere related to us, connected to us. We don't have any particular issue with it. But exactly, what is climate change? So at a global level or maybe at a regional level, there will be an average change occurring in the I'm sorry about the background disturbance if there is any. Yeah. So if there is a particular change occurring at a global or regional level in terms of the climate, that means the average temperature is increasing or average temperature is coming down. So when we notice that kind of a drastic shift or that kind of a shift in the existing or average temperature levels, the scientific community calls it as a climate change condition. Okay. So climate change was moreover considered as an issue of melting of glaciers or maybe all those issues which it predicted that it might be occurring in a future event, and it wasn't something that was very personally we are going to have an experience or something that was requiring an immediate action, but it was a future event which is threatening in nature. Okay, so moving onwards. Right now, we do not really use the term climate change, but we have the term climate crisis. So when we look at the term climate crisis, yes, it is giving us a hint that, okay, it is not something that is happening in the distant future, but it is something that is a crisis that we need to deal with it at the moment or maybe in the very near future. So we were again comfortable with this particular way of calling it as well, and we were saying that okay, that's not going to influence me much, so I'm not going to consider it as a threat. Right now, many of the nations as well as the UN agencies are considering this to be an emergency. So there is a very drastic shift which has occurred in terms of the climate. And then if we are expecting another maybe 1 degree rise in average temperature across the globe, that is going to be very much have a very, very negative impact on the human race or maybe the nature altogether. So right now we are stepped at a point or reached at a point where the climate change has become an emergency, which is quickly asking us to respond or react or maybe take the required measures. So yeah, this is the part which I told about. We know it. So exactly, we know a lot about climate emergency or maybe climate related acts, the conditions, all those things we are very familiar. In case if you are not really familiar and you are really, really looking forward to learn more about it, I'll suggest you to visit the UN's page. I'll be sharing the link with you in the comment box. So you can exactly go and visit the page. Right now, I don't think we'll be having enough time to discuss it. So you can definitely go and visit the particular page and get the facts about the climate emergency. So that is something that I'm leaving for you people to do in case if you're interested to know about it. So coming to this particular climate change, how is it going to have an impact on the daily life of each and every one of us? That's a question we are going to deal. So this picture, it is taken from one of the Malayalam newspaper itself. Many of you might have like seen this picture before. Can anyone tell me what it is exactly, or when did this happen, or at least where did it happen? Anyone from the audience?
The flood.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I couldn't see who it was, but anyway, thank you so much for the input. Yeah. So coming to this was the flood which happened in Kerala, and we had the events of flood in both the years, like in 2017 and 2018. And floods, or maybe even the droughts, or maybe the Oki cyclone, everything that we experienced at a very personal level, at a very very close proximity to our lives was something that was existing earlier within this our climate, or maybe within our region. So all these particular experiences like the floods, the droughts, the cyclones, or maybe even the wildfires, we are not really familiar with wildfires which might be occurring due to climate emergency, but we have seen a very hard changing situation of Australia, where we have seen the very poor animals which were burned alive in the wildfire, or maybe many people who lost their property, their house, their everything due to the wildfire, or maybe due to the flood. All those things we might have seen. And right now, this climate crisis or climate emergency is very much at our doorstep, or maybe we can say it is even inside our home. So we can say that in that way. So it is very urgent, and we are aware about it. So this is another effect, the melting of glaciers and related rise in the sea level. So all this are for the science folks, at least we do think in that way. So yeah, these are all different kinds of effects associated with this particular climate crisis. But coming to psychology, how is it going to have an influence, or how is it going to be important in psychology? Yeah, this is again another picture from news media, which is about the climate refugees. So the flood has resulted in many people who are not having a place to spend their day and night in a safe shelter. People were sent to rescue homes, or maybe some place where they might be leading their life as refugee, at least maybe for a period of time. But like this, when we go and look at the global aspects of this particular issue, we see a lot of climate refugees coming up in these days. There may be migration occurring among them. People might be traveling from one place to another, looking for job, looking for some kind of a occupation so that they can kind of earn their daily bread. So that's the kind of a migration that might be occurring, or maybe climate refugees that has been created due to the climate crisis that is occurring. And another important aspect, when there is a climate change that is occurring, there might be a lot of ecosystem that is going to have a really bad impact. And as a result, the animal human conflicts might be increasing, or maybe the contact between certain animals and animal species and the human species might be increased. So that might be leading to newer pandemics, or maybe that might be leading to newer conditions where there is an infection which is completely like new to the human immune system. And then there we can assume that, okay, right now we do not even need to explain, okay, what it would be. So we know about coronavirus, and we are still searching the origin of the same, from where it has come, or the Nipah outbreak, which has happened very recently in Kerala. So all those things are giving us some kind of an understanding about how climate change might be going to influence our very personal lives. So there again, another aspect which is another concern for us might be, yes, there might be crop failures, there might be drought, there might be really less amount of resources available for sharing. Or when it is coming to sharing of resource like water, people might not be considering it as a funny thing to do, because they might not be having enough for their own. So that kind of a condition might be resulting in conflicts or even wars. I'm not exaggerating, but we can see, we can take the example from many countries where there is a situation like this existing. So there is no exaggeration. Yes, it might be leading to the natural resources. The scarcity of it might be leading to a condition where there is a conflict or a war that is occurring to get the fair share of the resource, whatever is available. So even that is going to have an impact on the individual's psychology, or maybe individual's well-being. Yes. So the communities might be at a difficult point. And other things, yes, we are very familiar with, or maybe at least it's very saddening to say that we might be reading news reports which is speaking about the farmer suicide. Maybe the crop failure might have resulted in that. Or even conditions like child labor, or maybe the human trafficking, all these things might be in some way indirectly related to climate crisis, because certain communities might be at loss. Their crops might have failed. They might have expected some kind of a harvesting and the money out of it, but it is not happening. So what is the way left? It might be something that is not very lawful. So this kind of a situation might be provoking or maybe resulting in conditions which we do not really desire to happen in our community or maybe in our personal life. So even the migration and the other many other, we can list many other related issues which might be occurring as an outcome, indirect outcome of climate crisis. So all these are at a social level. And coming to psychological well-being, so how climate change might be influencing one's own well-being. So we were talking about the societal well-being, how it might be influencing the society. So there are few interesting research which is being done, how climate change might be affecting well-being. Yes. With all this discussion, definitely we'll be in a position to talk about traumatic incidents that is occurring out of a climate emergency, like a flood, or maybe after a wildfire, people might be experiencing bereavement. They might have lost someone, or they might have lost their possessions, and that might be putting the person into an experience of post-traumatic stress disorder, or maybe even depression, or maybe other clinical situations which we can actually associate, or which we can actually think from all the discussions which happened right now. Yeah. So there is issues like that. But apart from that, has anyone experienced a kind of a feeling, maybe when you went back to your childhood place, the places where you were living in your childhood, and you're finding out the place has changed so much? Have you ever experienced any feeling around that direction? Can anyone share any of your experience if you have experienced anything like that? That means you had a place in your childhood which was actually rich in natural environment, and by the time you grown up, you went out for studying or whatever reasons, you were in touch with that place, and then once you're going back to that place, or maybe when you look at that place has changed a lot. So can anyone share me such an experience if you have come across something like that? Anyone? Any student? Okay, we teachers usually dream of classes like this, where everyone is in pin drop silence and listening to the faculty. But we are getting it only when we are going online. So I don't know, how many of you are listening? How many of you are here? How many of you have actually lost the interest?
I can share one, I guess. I mean, my aunt stays in Andamans. So they had a quite few of land with too many of fruits and vegetables, all the agriculture farming and everything. But just one fine day, tsunami just hit it, and they lost with not even a house, not even land, nothing. And they have to come barehanded and start from one when they have to settle in Kerala. So that was a one big effect that I think I personally witnessed because of this climate change.
Thanks a lot, Anisha ma'am, for sharing that experience. Yes. Anyone else? Anyone else want to share the experience? Or at least you can look at the picture and then you can tell me what might be that polar bear experiencing or going through. At least we can have some analytic thinking coming there. But still, anyone want to comment?
It will take a lot of time to accept the situation. We'll be very sad, shocked to experience it.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Shreya. So yeah, we will move on. So that particular kind of an experience, when the original place, or maybe the place which we were belonging initially, it has changed a lot, or it is changing a lot, and the person finds that, okay, the situation is highly uncontrollable in nature. So there is no control over this particular situation where it is being changed, and we are, or that person is not in a position to help in any manner, but the person is left out, or the person is left to just look at it and be a witness to it. So that particular kind of experience is known as solastalgia. So that is one of the outcome of environmental psychology research, where we are actually coming up with a different kind of a looking at the issues evoked due to climate crisis or maybe environmental issues. So climate change and well-being, maybe we can talk about solastalgia, where the person might be experiencing kind of a nostalgia. It is similar to nostalgic pain. The person is experiencing a nostalgic experience, or maybe a negative feeling around the change of the situation, change of the natural environment. And solastalgia is in turn related to depression. Or maybe there are even conditions like eco-anxiety or eco-grief, which is not exactly due to any other reasons, but due to changes in the natural environment. The person is developing eco-anxiety, where the person is concerned about the natural environment and its uncontrollable changes, and the person is becoming someone who is in a helpless condition and not able to deal with it in any manner. So that in this particular manner, like the solastalgia or maybe eco-anxiety or ecological grief, all these things are existing, and many people are actually seeking psychological support to deal with situations like this. So what is important in there, in case if you have experienced something like that, what is important in there, the very first thing is to accept, okay, there is a condition like this, and accept that condition, and then be aware that, okay, there are people who are experiencing or those who are going through the similar kind of a situation. So that is very important when it is coming to ecological grief or eco-anxiety or related aspects. So other than that, okay, solastalgia is there, ecological grief is there. So all these things are posing a kind of threat to the well-being of the individual, particularly through climate change. So there again, there are reports coming up. Maybe the amount of carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, like substances in the air, or maybe we can say that air quality. Air quality is in turn related to the tendency of suicide attempts. This study is particularly from the background of Malaysia and Singapore, and there the studies talks about, okay, how this hazy days, that means where the days in which the air quality index is really low in that particular area, how the suicidal attempts are reported really high on those kind of a hazy days. So when we try to look at the climate change, or maybe the resultant pollutions, or maybe even the other aspects of changing environment, it is having a direct impact on the person's well-being. That is what the studies are showing. So we might be aware about all the physical health issues of pollution or maybe climate change, but they're at the same place. Yes, at another hand, we have to admit the fact that this kind of an issue might be resulting in psychological distress or maybe psychological conditions which might be requiring some kind of an assistance or help to deal with it. Okay, so that is where the environmental psychology or conservation behaviors becoming an important issue of our discussion. Okay. So what is the solution there? Yeah, the solution is nothing but considering environmentally friendly alternatives or engaging in behaviors which might be helpful or which might be sustainable in nature. And again, looking at the literature, what are the different types of behavior? Stern speaks about 4 different types of behavior, especially pro-environmental behaviors. One is private level pro-environmental behaviors. There's like very individual behaviors. Maybe you are choosing to use public transport instead of going by your own vehicle, or without driving your vehicle, you are choosing the public transport. That's a private level pro-environmental behavior. There again, what is a public kind of behavior? The policy makers, maybe the governments can actually set up public facilities which might be fostering the tendency of people to engage in in a sustainable manner or behave in a sustainable manner. So that comes as the public level pro-environmental behavior. Then we have activist behaviors. Yes, we are very much familiar about this. We had the Narmada Bachao Andolan. So we have heard about many people who were like involving in activist kind of behavior where they were pursuing or persuading the people, other people, as well as the people with like the power, people who are in a powerful position to engage in pro-environmental behavior. So activist behaviors. Right now we are very familiar with the Greta Thunberg and her activity of Fridays for Future. So like that, there are activist behaviors, examples that we can draw from different part of the world. And then comes the fourth kind of behavior, which is something like the other significant behaviors, like at an organizational setup. The organization is actually putting up an idea to be eco-friendly in nature, or maybe to give some alternatives to their employees, or provide some kind of a way of life for their particular group of people. So like that, there might be other kind of behaviors which might be, yeah. Nisha ma'am?
It's okay. In between it got stuck, that's why. Now it's perfect.
Okay, I can go ahead, right?
Yes, miss.
Thank you. So do I need to repeat any part?
No, miss.
It's fine, right? Yeah, thank you. Okay, so these are the different types of pro-environmental behaviors that has been discussed by START. So we can actually identify the behaviors which is required, and we can actually put it into different baskets. We have different baskets here, so we can put it into that. And then when we try to go further and see, okay, that individual behaviors might be influenced by certain antecedents. So maybe we can say that, okay, my decision to use a public transport, it might be influenced by the availability, the accessibility, and how my friends, my peers, my other colleagues, how they might be viewing this particular behavior of coming or traveling by public transport. So like that, when we try to look at each basket of behavior, there will be different factors which is resulting in that kind of a behavior. So first we understand the behavior, what is appropriate at that particular moment. And then we will be trying to look at what is actually guiding or what is actually propelling that particular behavior. So there, the question comes again. Okay, so our point of discussion was, we know it, okay, but what is next? So when we look at that particular question, okay, having that climate awareness, or where we know that, okay, it's an emergency, we need to act now, or the government is saying it's an emergency, we need to act now, whether this is going to have an impact on the individual behavior. So there again now comes in a number of factors like the accessibility, availability, and how costly the behavior is going to be. And I'm choosing to travel by a public transport, and then the public transport isn't that as fast, it isn't actually that frequent, and if I end up reaching my department late on every day, that is going to cost a lot for me, and I cannot afford to travel for longer because of other reasons. Yes, the cost of behavior might be influencing our decision to behave or not to behave. There again, there might be a lot of control factors coming into picture. So whether I'll be in a position to control that behavior, or whether I'll be having the resources to afford that behavior. And as I mentioned, whether my other groups, the people other than me, maybe my colleagues, maybe my family, do they agree? Do they actually promote that behavior, or do they like look at me and say that, okay, why are you using a public transport? Why are you not spending on traveling? Are you trying to say something? That kind of a question might not be very much pleasing to people. And when it is placed at a personal level, it might be influencing my own behavior of choosing to travel by public transport or not choosing to travel by public transport. So exactly, my intention might be changed at that particular point in time. And again, another important aspect, awareness isn't enough. We need some kind of a favorable attitude towards that kind of a behavior. So there again, I have this awareness. I need to travel or use more of public transport. I understand that. I have that awareness. But there again, I'm not finding it to be a good option because I am not very familiar with the place. I'm not very familiar with the language. So there are 100 things that is preventing me from behaving in that particular manner. Okay, so the attitude, the awareness, the accessibility, availability, the cost associated to the behavior, like that, we can come up with a long list of factors, which sometimes which is voluntary in nature, which is rational in nature. Sometimes it might be very irrational, or maybe we can say that something that is very non-voluntary in nature, just like our habit. So like that, there will be 100 factors which is coming into picture and which is going to influence how we are behaving at the end. So though we have the awareness, though we are very clear about, okay, what behaviors is appropriate and how it is going to have an impact, but there again, at the end, the final outcome of behavior might not be exactly what we are planning, because all these 100 factors might be coming into picture and it will be influencing our decision. Okay, so this is one of the study findings from my own research, where it mentioned the intention to behave in an eco-friendly manner is influenced by the favorable attitude the person possesses towards it, then how far the person thinks the other people are in favor of that particular behavior, and also this will be in turn activating one's obligation. Okay, I might be finding it an obligating thing to behave in a particular manner. So again, taking the example of using the public transport, where I mentioned about, I have a favorable attitude. It is a really good thing to travel by the bus because it is frequent, it is good, it is not very crowded. So I'm having a very personal positive attitude towards that. And then the community around me is also very much aware and concerned about the eco-friendly aspect of that particular behavior. And they are all saying, yeah, we should be doing it too. Yeah, that kind of a situation might be activating our moral obligation to behave in a certain manner. So there I feel like I should be behaving. I should be behaving because it is something that is very beneficial for the environment. And in turn, it might be beneficial for my own well-being. So for the reason I will be behaving in that manner. So that kind of an obligation would be coming up. And that in turn might be adding to the intention to behave in a particular manner. So there's a few literature which talks about that. And there again, coming back to Gifford study, it's a very, very interesting study. And Gifford is actually really done a wonderful study where he came up with 7 different factors and their specific manifestations that is going to act as barrier to climate change mitigation and adaptation. When we Anisha,
Everyone, please mute yourself. Please make sure your audio is
I hope
muted.
I can go ahead. Yes.
Yes,
when
ma'am.
we try to look at the dragons, I think I am on unmute. Rhea, can you confirm? Am I audible?
Yeah,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, audible.
Thank you. So, looking at the Dragons of Action report by Gifford, Gifford actually talks in a very wonderful manner about the different aspects, which is actually preventing us from acting in a climate-friendly manner. So, there he talks about the limited cognition. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this question, like if a pond has lotus in it, and it takes half a day to fill the, or maybe half a day to multiply that particular number of lotus in that pond. And then if the pond is half filled on the 15th day, when the pond will be completely covered. So there are questions like that. I am pretty sure that we might have received questions like that. And most of the time we have that our short heuristic thinking coming in our picture, and we might be saying, yeah, on the 13th day it might be fully covered. So we have our cognitive abilities, which is highly limited. At least at some point in time, the automatic processing might be kicked up, our ancient brain might be kicked up, and then we might be choosing the easiest response, which might not be actually correct. So similarly, when it is coming to the cognitive action, or sorry, the climate change mitigation actions, our limited cognition or ancient brain, or maybe our ignorance, or maybe this environmental numbness, because we have heard a lot about this issue, climate change. We have heard about it umpteen number of times, and we aren't really sure how is it going to have an impact on our personal lives. And for the same reason, yes, the uncertainty or that numbness, we have heard a lot, and it is not really worth the time. So that kind of a numbness might be putting the person into a condition where he or she isn't thinking a lot about that. And also our brains are limited. There again, we have our own worries, and the finite pool of worry hypothesis say that, okay, the human beings cannot take a lot worries than something that the brain can process. So finite pool of worry hypothesis speak in a way that say that, okay, we might be taking only what is important to us immediately, rather than considering about something that is abstract in nature or something that require a lot of cognitive attention for a longer period of time. So that limited cognition might be an issue. Then the dragon of action, ideologies, yes, where we are someone who thinks that, okay, human beings are made to like enslave this natural environment, and we are expected to like kind of control it, use it for our benefit. So if we are a person who is considering humans to be the center than the nature to be the center, so there comes the issue. The world view is something different. So there you are oriented towards that. Or the person is valuing economic benefits more than the environmental aspects or transcendental aspects. So there, even that kind of a belief or that kind of a world view might be, again, putting a lot of hindrance to our action in a climate change mitigation direction. Okay, so the ideologies might be important. Yes. Then another thing, comparison with others, as we mentioned, yes, the social norm becomes important. How others are behaving, that becomes important. How others perceive me, that becomes important. There again, there are financial investment which has happened already. So this particular sunk cost, we have already made some investment, and taking a back foot might going to hurt our financial investment which is done already. So the sunk cost part might be coming in. Then another important aspect, people are climate skeptics. We have world leaders, as I mentioned in the very beginning, we have world leaders who are climate skeptics, and they say that, yeah, we don't really see the effect. No, there is no climate change. There is a denial. There is a mistrust. There people are considering it to be some kind of a hidden agenda associated with the climate change science. Or maybe there again, there might be a lot of risk that is perceived. So, the last dragon of action is the limited behavior, where we see that, okay, certain number of people are allowed to do that. Or maybe there is a restriction placed. And then once the restriction is removed, yeah, I'm free to do that, I'll be doing it. So that feeling of ownership isn't there. So that kind of a limited behavior, all this might be resulting in preventing the person from acting in a particular manner to deal with the climate change. So this is a very wonderful work by Gifford, which talks about what are the different factors which might be putting us a barrier. So we know about the issue, and we have a lot of barriers coming in our pathway. So what is next? That is the next aspect that we will be looking at. But before we move on to that, another important phenomena that is happening right now, or maybe that is happening in our global setting for a few influential period, is about the populist leadership. So talking about populist leadership, that's again a social phenomena rather than a psychological phenomena. But the populist leadership comes with a cost, especially when it is something that is kind of in a populist leadership. What happens? A populist leader will be there. There will be one person who would be considered as an authority figure, and that authority figure would be considered as the representative of the very common man. Okay. So anyone other than the common man would be considered as an elite. So there it can be the scientist, there it can be the media reporters, or there it can be some kind of a power centers. All of it might be considered as elites. And this populist leadership would be considering only common people. So there is one figure or one leader who was elected from, or maybe who was a representative of all these common people, and then everyone else who's putting again, so maybe who's putting a different kind of an agenda, or maybe we can say strategy, than the populist leader, might be considered as an elite. And then their words or maybe their thoughts might be considered as something that is a hindrance to the benefit of all this common people who are assembled behind this particular populist leader. So for example, we can take the case of US. So Donald Trump, who was a businessman and who was representing the US for a period of time, and then there the people were focusing more on making US great again, or maybe the financial benefit, more business, more opportunities. So there the people who were portraying climate crisis or climate emergency were considered as someone who was actually plotting against the national interest. So there the point of anti-elitism coming into the picture. They think that, yes, the climate change is something that is an agenda put forth by people who are actually favoring other countries rather than not the US, and they are particularly trying to evade the chances of US to grow further with their business or maybe their other economical benefits associated to it. So that kind of a populist leadership, and the people who follow the populist leaders usually think that, yes, the climate is not actually changing a lot, or maybe it is not something that's a scientist centered idea that is being propagated right now. So the populist leadership and people who are working in such a or maybe believing in such an ideology might be end up being climate skeptics. They say that, okay, the scientists are talking about the carbon levels in the atmosphere. The scientists are talking about the warming up of globe. So I'm not actually saying it. So that's why I started in the beginning, okay, when we talked about defining climate and weather. So how it was related, or how is it different? So there again, we can see that the leader was saying, yes, the climate hasn't changed a bit, or it is even cooler than usual. So there is no global warming happening. So like that, there can be people who might be a climate skeptic and who do not value any kind of a pro-environmental behavior. So this goes to the discredence dragon of inaction in the Gifford's list. But there again, since this populist leadership is a phenomenon which is in rise in the particular time period, I think it is really important to discuss that. And this leadership might be acting in a manner like withdrawing from serious environment or climate emergency deals, and also maybe they might be cutting down on the fundings associated with it. So that those kind of situation might be leading to conditions which might be reducing the climate change or mitigation activities. So there again, if you are interested to know whether you are someone who are a climate skeptic, there are scales available online. You can actually go and check and see how strongly you believe in climate crisis, or are you a climate skeptic. So you can get that understanding. And if you are definitely a climate skeptic, you should be like taking this thing seriously, and you should be putting yourself into a position where you are actually thinking the other way, or maybe acting the other way, rather than being a climate skeptic, because we have actually started experiencing it in our personal lives, the effect of climate crisis. So there again, another important aspect I think we should be discussing right now is the pandemic. So how the pandemic has influenced. This is one of the very recent study conducted by this group of researchers. And this particular research showed that yes, this corona or this pandemic had actually have an impact on the climate crisis, or maybe the climate crisis understanding of people, where people understood that, okay, there is this emergency situation. So this might be an outcome of the same, that emergency which existed already, which we weren't really addressing in the past. So this kind of a coronavirus outbreak or this pandemic outbreak has actually given some breathing space for people to consider nature along with their personal agendas, or maybe along with their personal aspects. So this particular study show that the social responsibility of the person has increased, or the climate awareness has increased as a result of their experience of this particular pandemic. Okay, so there again, what is an outcome, or what would be the way forward in this particular situation? So there are many different aspects that we need to discuss, which include maybe looking at these different things, like the policy need to be changed. The different international and national organizations, agencies should be putting much effort to make the people understand about the issue of climate change. Or maybe there are other things coming up, like providing the possibilities to act in a pro-environmental manner by making some changes in the existing system. So these are all the different things. And along with that, as we mentioned, maybe provide the individual behaviors need to be enhanced. So there again, another important study that I think I should be discussing right now is about, okay, how we can frame the messages associated to climate crisis. So we have mentioned, okay, there is a issue of climate crisis being considered through an environmental numb manner, where the person isn't actually concerned about the issue, because we have received a whole lot of communication. There's a lot of communication which had come up, and it says that, okay, this is something that is very drastic in nature and we cannot do much about it. So that kind of a communication, where it is an obituary, where we are hearing about all the stories of loss, death, and all the other negative aspects associated to climate crisis, and where we see that, okay, we are failing, and when we are trying to act in a climate friendly manner, we have to let go of something, we have to sacrifice something. So that kind of a communication will actually, according to this particular study, they say that that kind of a sacrificial communication or an obituary that is happening in terms of the climate communication will actually make the person demotivated to work. But there again, in the other way, if we are getting the message in a positive framework and in a motivating framework, that kind of success stories would actually increase the possibility that the person might be engaging in climate friendly behavior. So the framing of message is going to be important in this particular context of climate change. So instead of obituaries, it is important to look at the success stories, and we need to focus more on people who have done well, or the governments, or maybe the achievements that we have in the direction of climate crisis, rather than looking at the negative stories. That will be motivating us more to engage in a climate friendly manner. Okay. So apart from that, what are the different aspects? One thing that is important is the environmental design. So maybe I can take one or two of your comments here. How many of you, or maybe at least one of you, can tell me, if you walk at a place, maybe a town square or something, and you have some waste in your hand, waste in the sense it might be maybe plastic wrappers in your hand. And if you're a person who's really concerned about littering in the public places, and you're looking for a dustbin, that in one condition, that town square is completely new to you. You are a stranger in there. You do not know the places, and you do not have an idea, okay, how this where this dustbin would be, and you do not know much about the people around and how this town is planned. None of this information is available to you. And then on the other hand, you are in a very familiar place where you know the each and every corner of that particular place, and in which condition you would be actually deciding to throw that plastic wrapper in a dustbin. Which condition would be providing you that opportunity? It's a very simple question. Anyone can answer.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yeah, yes, Sarin, go ahead.
If it's a familiar place, obviously I'll find a dustbin And if it's not a familiar place, also I'll be finding. And if I don't reach there, maybe I'll throw it somewhere else.
Okay, so Serene, thanks for that response. But I will have another question for you. In a familiar place, you will definitely throw it in a dustbin. But in an unfamiliar place, you want to throw it in a dustbin. But by the time you reach at it, or maybe what would be your maybe state of mind when you are searching for one in an unfamiliar place?
Sometimes I'll get irritated. I'll come. See, or most of the times I'll be taking that to my home. That's what I'm
You
doing.
will be carrying it with you. Yeah.
Yeah, and my cousins would tease me like, why do you want to take that? Just throw it in the roadside.
Okay, Serene is giving an example of social norms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They always tease me for doing that.
Yeah. So I think Seren would be in a position to relate it at a personal level and connect the thing and say that, okay, this is going to be an issue. Okay, so thanks a lot, Seren. So when we try to look at this particular issue or scenario which we were putting in there, and when the place is not really familiar and you are pushed to search for it, you might not be finding a peace of mind because you are not really familiar with the place. And it is very difficult for you to navigate through the place already. And on top of that, you have to put extra effort to find out a dustbin and dump the waste in that particular dustbin. So when we try to look at this environment design, what is meaning in here? When we have a built environment, we should be making sure that these kind of things like the dustbins or maybe public transport, all these things should be placed in a manner, or it should be architectured into that particular design in a manner where it will be easily accessible to everyone. Even if the person is familiar, even if the person is very clear about the route, even if the person is not very clear about the route, there should be some kind of indicators or some kind of um, consideration that happened at the very planning level, which might be kind of adding or helping to take the person a pro-environmental stand. So there again, if you are a person who's living at a town or maybe urban setting, so there you will be finding it very difficult to dump the waste. That is a very serious issue at most of our towns, most of our cities, where we might be finding it very hard to dump a safe place to, or maybe a proper place to dump the waste. And what will happen? People cannot actually take that particular issue because there are 100 other things which might be worrying the person, or there might be other concerns like, okay, will I be safe if I travel to another place to dump this particular waste? And that kind of a worry, so that kind of an issues in turn might be affecting the person's behavior. And whenever there is a spot where they can just dump the waste and run away, they'll be doing it because this environment isn't designed properly. So when the environment is designed properly, in order to maybe something that is helping us to take up a public transport, or maybe something that helping us to, or maybe facilitating our decision to behave in a pro-environmental manner, is going to be very much important. So the environmental design is going to be very much important. There are a lot more to be discussed here, but I think you might have got a very brief idea of how this environmental designs might be helping us to behave in a pro-environmental manner. And there again, another important aspect, when we look at the built environment, or maybe the way in which the globe is heading, the people who have access to natural places, or maybe green canopy, we can say, is actually someone, or it is inversely proportional to the financial aspect that they are having. So there is an inequality that is raising in terms of the green or natural environment, even to an individual, the way
Ma'am, you're not audible.
I think there's some network issue.
I think she's having some network issues. Let's wait for the time being.
Anisha ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, miss.
Right now, I'll share my screen. I'm so sorry. There was some kind of a connectivity issue and my Wi-Fi got stuck for some reason. I'm not very sure of. Yeah, maybe I'll take up from here.
Miss, if you have a network issue, it's okay if you don't share it. I would love to hear from you.
I think I will be able to. Let me try, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Is it shared?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So I was telling about the nature aspect, how unequal when it is coming to the natural environment, the people, the urbanization which is happening right now, how it is making people not very equally accessible to this particular natural or maybe environmental aspect. So the nature restoration and biophilia is another important proposition that that is in the environmental psychology, where we say that when people are given a chance to be in the nature, or maybe at a very natural setting, that will be providing people the chance to restore themselves, not just physically, but also at a psychological level. So we might have experienced this when we come out of the class, when we walk in the very natural, maybe we can say that the campus, which is filled with trees and also, we'll be finding it so relaxing. We'll be finding it, we'll be finding ourselves so nourished, or maybe in a very well position. So nature has that particular quality, or trees have that particular quality, helping us to restore ourselves, or maybe to relax, or have some.
Everyone, please mute your audios.
Am I audible, Rhea?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Yeah. So yes, so as I mentioned, yes, nature has that particular quality, and the people not having access to nature might be putting the person in a condition where the person might be irritated, and the person might not be considering anymore to act in an environmental friendly manner, because they don't have time, they don't have the possibility to worry about something that isn't in their hand. So there again, it is important to design our cities, or design our built spaces in a manner which might be providing everyone the equal chances to get the nature or drench themselves in the nature and restore themselves. And this biophilia hypothesis also supports the same thing and say that, okay, every human being might be having the tendency to go back to nature and to be with nature because it is there in our predisposition. So nature is going to give us the solution. So nature is something that we are trying to conserve, and at the same time it will be something that will be providing us with an opportunity to conserve it and move forward and to deal with this particular issue of climate crisis. So in a nutshell, yes, we are aware about climate crisis and we know that, okay, this is the consequences, or at least we started experiencing it at very face value. And then when we are aware about it, or when we are at least concerned about it, it is important to think of ways in which how we can improve our actions in a manner where it might be resulting in better outcomes in terms of acting in an environment friendly manner. So there again, it is important to identify what are the barriers that we might be experiencing when we try to look at this particular behavior or maybe eco-friendly behaviors. And once we understand that particular aspect, it is important to look at it from a very individual level to a very global policy level. And also, if it is required, maybe as we can see, there are a lot of activists coming up. They are speaking about, okay, how this nation should be controlled in terms of their emissions, or in terms of the policies, how it should be changed, or how we should be shifting from fossil fuel to other kind of natural fuels or eco-friendly methods. So we need to focus on those aspects. And the one last point I want to mention again is that nature is the key. The thing that we are trying to conserve, the very thing that we are trying to conserve is the very key to this particular issue and its solution. So we should be like very much aware and mindful about this issue, and we should be in a position to utilize and persuade our awareness, utilize our awareness to persuade people, or maybe people at powerful position, to take up initiatives which might be answering or which might be promoting environmentally friendly behaviors. So I think the learning will happen when we have questions. And I'm sitting here with a notebook and a pen. I want to take down every questions you have. I think those questions are going to be very crucial in determining, okay, how this or how this session was effective. And also maybe from here, I think I will be getting few questions to ponder over, or maybe to research upon, to add to the existing pool of literature. So I'm very happy to receive your questions, but I'm not promising I'm going to answer to each one of them, because I don't know whether I'll be in a position to. But I'll very happy to open the stage for all of you, and to listen from all of you any questions you have.
Participants, please do list your queries in the chat box. Ma'am, there's a question. What is our role in this crisis?
Okay, so I'm so sorry, I didn't see who has asked that question. Maybe I also come to the chat box so that I can see the person, the name.
Ma'am, it is from YouTube, I guess.
Oh, it's from YouTube. Okay, so talking about what is our role. So the very one thing I didn't mention about climate crisis is that it's anthropogenic nature. So the very thing, the anthropogenic, which say that, okay, it is something that is human-driven climate crisis that is happening. I don't know whether the person meant the race of human, the human race, or maybe the person meant at a personal level. But I'm answering it from a point of view, the human race. So when we try to look at this particular climate change scenario that is occurring, pre-industrialist period and post-industrial period, we will see a drastic change in the carbon dioxide emission or maybe other greenhouse gas emission in the atmosphere. So the levels of carbon dioxide or other greenhouse gases in the atmosphere is really high after the industrialist period, where we are using or burning a lot of fossil fuels to run our machines, or maybe we can say all the different machines that we are using. So this particular condition might have actually added to the constant changes that is occurring in the environment. Even otherwise, there will be a lot of natural phenomena which might be resulting in increased amount of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. But this industrialist revolution or industrialist period might have actually resulted or accelerated that pace, and which is resulting in this climate crisis, or where we see that the pace in which that is happening is really, really crucial here. So if I got the question in the correct way, this is my answer. If you are asking the question from a very personal level, what we can do in this particular situation, one thing is to be very aware of the situation, then do things at a personal level possible to reduce the emissions. And also maybe we can talk about this louder, so that more people will be listening and more people will be doing or maybe engaging in kind of a behavior which might be beneficial for the environment. And this is at a very ideal level, but you can think about your own personal things, personal aspects, and then you can actually make some changes in your personal life. But as I mentioned, there are a lot of dragons that are out there, and which is actually putting a barrier in the way in which we are behaving. So there comes the importance of researchers like this, where we are trying to learn what is putting the person to behave in such a manner. I'm not really sure at what level the person meant how we are at stake in this particular situation. Do you have any? Yeah.
Ma'am, I have a question. It is
Yes,
often
Shreya.
said that climatic changes are due to the negative actions of humans. But is it always correct? Is it always due to the actions of humans?
Yeah, so there again, negative action, positive action, how do we define it? That is another aspect. Okay, I think you meant human behavior.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, human behavior at large.
നമ്മൾ ഇങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ ചെയ്യുന്നോണ്ടാണ് നേച്ചർ നമ്മളോട് ഇങ്ങനെ ബിഹേവ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്, അങ്ങനെ ഒരു എപ്പോഴും കേൾക്കാറുണ്ട്. സോ
Okay,
is it
so
always true?
Okay, so Ray is trying to say that okay, nature is behaving in this manner because we are not really being friendly with the nature. So that is a kind of we are trying to put some kind of human emotions to the nature, and we are kind of thinking in a very animistic manner. Where we say that okay, nature also has a consciousness and it is trying to take a revenge upon human beings. Instead of that, I'm not saying that it is not true, because we cannot prove it or we cannot actually disprove it. So the way in which I'm perceiving it, I can just share that my way of perceiving this, or maybe my worldview I can share with you. I think that nature is omnipotent. It has all the power. So again, this climate change might be something that is happening even though the humans are there or not there. That might not be very serious issue. But the pace in which this climate change might be occurring might have been different, might have been slower if we weren't there and we weren't acting in a different manner or in this particular manner. And there again, the negative actions. So there I might need to bring in the example of ecological worldview, where we say that, okay, we have enough for our needs, but we do not have enough for our greenness. So there it is very clear that, okay, if we are trying to get the more than what the nature can give to us, if you meant that negative behavior as something that greediness of the human race, then maybe we can say that is it might be true. But there again, it is at a very emotional level. We are trying to put that emotional consciousness, all these things to the environment, and say that okay, that might be the way in which the environment is trying to give us that answer. But my idea is that this climate change would be happening, but the pace of it might have been different if the human intervention wasn't there at this particular rate.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Hello,
Yes.
am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir. You're.
Yeah. Alphonsa, madam, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you, but
Yeah.
yes, sir. I was trying to get your name. Right now I can.
Myself, Sijo Jacob. Recently, I have come across a word, ecological terrorism or environmental terrorism, right?
Okay.
Recently, I just read from an article, I think. See, can we connect the psychological significance of this ecological terrorism here? Can we connect something over here, please?
Yes, sir. I think if I'm getting that particular word from perspective where people are actually fighting for something like this natural resources, is it exactly that's a ecological terrorism?
Exactly. The extremists who are who are stand to like protection of environment in an extreme way.
So ecological terrorism and psychological aspects of it. So when we try to look at this particular scene, when we were discussing about that aspect of psychological effect of the same, so we were mentioning a bit about this aspect, how this kind of natural, I projected the wrong slide. So how this natural resources, when it becoming very much limited, so the limited natural resources and its division, or maybe taking it up, or maybe dividing it among the people, might be putting the person in a position where they are not in an advantageous condition. They need more to survive. So in that condition, there might be conflicts arising, and that conflicts in turn might be resulting in situations like ecological terrorism, where people might be fighting, where people might be indulging in behaviors that are extremist in nature in order to conquer more, or in order to get more. And that will in turn definitely going to influence the well-being of the individual. And what we can do at a psychological level is that climate justice, or maybe equality or equity. Instead of equity, I think we should be going with the idea of instead of equality, we should be going with the idea of equity when it is coming to the way in which this climate crisis is dealt. Every nation, every organization, every individual should contribute what is maximum possible. And also we should be because since we are dealing or trying to answer this question at a level of extremist behaviors, terrorist behavior, so there it is important for the global leaders to come together, act together, and also look at this particular issue from an equity perspective and deal with it, rather than trying to deal with it at a very individual level. Sijo sir, maybe we can have a discussion rather than I'm answering the question.
Yeah, madam, sure. Some extent, I think ecological terrorism is better for the environment and human, I think. But if it is going in an extreme way, I think it may be developmental and other constructive process may be affected, I think.
Exactly. Thank you, Sijo sir, for the input.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, there's another question. Even humidity and cloudiness can change the mood of people, and it may be a percipient of depression. Is there any correlation between that?
Yeah. So when I was mentioning about the air quality index and studies which were reporting about the same. So the humidity, temperature levels, all these are actually researched upon, and the researchers has concluded saying that yes, that might be influenced, or that has a very strong relationship between the person's well-being, the environmental factors, even noise. If you are living at a place, or if you are working at a place where there is a lot of noise, which is actually disturbing to you, it will be definitely influencing your productivity, your way of thinking, or maybe how peaceful you are. So all these factors would be influenced. So similarly, temperature, humidity, air quality, all these different factors are going to have an impact on the individual's well-being. And I think I have given that references as well, which was mentioning about how this air quality index is going to have an impact on the suicidal attempts at a place. So similarly, there are reports showing that, okay, how this temperature might be resulting in increased criminal crime behaviors among the people. So like that, there are a lot of literature which speaks about how this climate change or maybe environmental aspects might be influencing a person's well-being.
Thank you, ma'am. And thank you, Dr. Shibu, for asking the question. Ma'am, it looks like we have covered all the questions. So can we continue?
Yeah. I was actually checking the chat to see the questions.
Ma'am, it is in the YouTube chat box.
Oh, okay. I'm not checking it right now.
Okay, ma'am. So the feedback form will be provided in the chat box. Please do fill them by clearly stating your name, institute, and mail ID. And thank you so much, ma'am, for providing much food for thought. Even though the session was interrupted due to some network issues, it was indeed a wonderful and informative session. Thank you, ma'am. Now, may I call Vasila K. Taha of second year BSc Psychology to propose the vote of thanks.
Am I audible, Priya?
Yes, Vasila.
So, good evening, everyone. It's my great honor and pleasure to be chosen to deliver the vote of thanks on this auspicious occasion on behalf of Christi Jyoti College of Management and Technology and Psychology Department. First and foremost, I thank God Almighty for giving us this opportunity to organize a successful 17th session of the International Webinar Series PSY HUB despite the COVID-19 pandemic. I express my sincere gratitude to our resource person, Dr. Alphonsa Jose, Assistant Professor, Christ University, Bangalore, for enlightening us with an informative webinar. It was really an inspiring and motivating session. Thank you so much, ma'am. Next, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our principal, Father Joshi Chiram Kuyal CMI. Without his support and guidance, this webinar would not have been fruitful. Thank you, Father. I also thank our Vice Principal, Dr. Verghese Anthony, for his support and enlightenment. Next, I would like to extend our sincere gratitude to our HOD, Dr. Angel Thomas, for without her, this event would not have been such a great success. Thank you so much, ma'am. I also take this opportunity to thank the coordinators of this webinar, Ms. Anisha Rajan and Ms. Binita Rose, Assistant Professors of KCNT, and all other teachers who worked hard to make this event a memorable one. Thank you, dear teachers. I also express my sincere thanks to the technical team behind this webinar, especially Sijo sir, Roji sir, Catherine ma'am, and Jacob. Finally, I would like to thank all the student coordinators of this webinar, and I thank each and every one of you who have attended this session and made this a grand success. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Vasila. Participants, please do make sure you fill the feedback form. So we have come to the end of the webinar. On behalf of KCMT, I thank each and every one of you, especially Dr. Alphonsa, for her gracious presence. Thank you and have a safe weekend.
Thank you everyone for this opportunity, and I hope this discussion was productive, and also at least few of you are at least
yes, it was really
encouraged to look forward and familiarize yourself with the field of environmental psychology. And thanks a lot for the participants, the questions, and this opportunity. And Anisha ma'am, you were very, very kind enough and patient with me.
Thank you. Jacob?